Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Shout out to the 19. Folks, we have WNBA playoff ratings in already. Yes, I am surprised as well. I didn't expect them to have them this quickly. And we have some pretty interesting numbers for you, both good and bad for the league. Starting off with the good. Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever against the Connecticut Sun and the other people. 1.84. Where is it? 1.84 million viewers on ABC. The largest WNBA playoff audience any round since Game 2 of the WNBA Finals back in 2000. Liberty Comets, 2.12 million viewers. The most watched game outside of the finals since Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals back in 1999, which did 2.62 million. And here's the kicker, because this is a big, big difference. It is the most watched game ever to air on NFL Sunday, which surpassed Game 2 of the 2003 Finals, which did 1.28 million viewers. Now, that is a huge difference, folks. We are talking, what is that? 560,000, over 500,000 viewers difference, almost 50%, about maybe 45% difference in the audience. That is crushing it. And of course, we now know 24th WNBA game this season to cross the million viewer threshold. Caitlin Clark has played in all but 3 of them. 2 of them were lead-ins. I say this every time too because I always forget. I think both were lead-ins. Their one bit might have been right after, but I think they were both lead-ins to Caitlin Clark games. So only one of the games actually stood on its own. The previous record in a season was 15 back in 98. No game, as you know, has hit the million viewer mark since 2008. So it has been absolute killer season for the WNBA in terms of TV ratings. However, big, big, big red flags. And that is this, because we're seeing this all the time. Compared to ABC's lone first round game last year, well, okay, one more good thing. This compared to ABC's lone first round game last year, which was the Sky Aces game 2, viewership increased fourfold from 426,000. That's the good news leading into what I was going to say. I got a little ahead of myself. The Clark effect. Do you see these words? The Clark effect, as we keep saying. And this is where the WNBA keeps messing up and fundamentally misunderstanding what is happening. It did not carry over into the other playoff games, folks. None of which cracked 500,000. Keep that in mind. The Fever drew 1.84 million. The next highest playoff game, we are in the playoffs now. Storm Aces, 461,000. The Dream Liberty only drew 410,000. Mercury Lynx, 403,000. Now, they try and put a positive spin, but this is also important to understand, as we've talked about before. While they could pale in comparison to Clark, and then some, cruise past the 8 other first-round openers under the current WNBA playoff format that began in 2022, not exactly a long time ago. The most watched of which was Mercury Aces game 1 2 years ago, 398,000. Okay, so that's not a huge increase. And then it says, oh, they were also only on ESPN2. So that makes it even less really of an increase. And again, on top of that, we're going to go right to, I think that's the end of this, right to this. again, which I've showed you, comparing it to only the last 2 years because the format is absurd. As I showed you this in another video. This drop happened everywhere across the board. This is not a WNBA thing. This was the whole, you know what it was. Um, but my point being is this is the growth they keep referring to over the last few years is this, which has not been growth. It's been going back to the pre 2021 ratings crash that happened to pretty much all sports, to go basically treading water all the way back to 2004. That's as far back as this goes. There's basically been no growth until this year, where, of course, the red is the Indiana Fever, and we see what they've done. And then the rest of the league, Caitlin Clark has pulled them up a little bit, okay? But they're still, it's not much ahead of what it was 20 years ago. And that is where we get the problem with the WNBA, as we talked about before, with looking at this, the Fever attendance versus everyone else. And a lot of these numbers, as we again have talked about before, have been artificially inflated when you factor out their home games, many of which moved to bigger arenas. See, Connecticut, Dallas, and Chicago did not move their Clark games to bigger arenas. They still had they still had increases, but not like the others. Where Vegas, I think they moved one game, so that could have been an even higher. But the difference, I mean, look at Atlanta. Home attendance versus Indiana, 17,592 against everyone else, 3,300. Washington, over 20,000 per game against Indiana, less than 5,000 against everyone else. Minnesota, 19,000 against Indiana, 8,200 against everybody else, and so on. There has been a slight bump, and I go back to this, a slight bump for everyone else, as we saw in those numbers where they just showed. Okay, what was it in? I mean, actually, now that I think about it, when we look at this, right, and we look at the dip because of that, and it was recovering from it, that makes this today's numbers look even worse because they barely beat midweek openers. Sunday was a weekend, right? They barely beat midweek openers while we were having overall ratings crashes in a lot of sports because of what was going on at the time. So that makes these numbers here, the 461,000 and the 410,000 and the 403,000, that looks even worse relative to that 398 from 2 years ago. It is the Caitlin Clark effect. It has pulled up the rest of the league a little bit, but when you bunch all the numbers together, it looks much rosier than it actually is. And that is a problem for the league that they need to recognize and understand. And when I say it's a problem for the league, if you take it without all the context and surrounding of what's going on, you can say, okay, that's not really their fault. They brought in Caitlin Clark. She brought in these new fans. However, and they're focused on her. Okay. But every single step of the way, as we know, the league has messed up. The league has completely, pretty much, if you said do everything wrong, that's what the league has managed to do. From the way players handled it on the court with Caitlin Clark, to the officials with Caitlin Clark, to the sports media talking about Caitlin Clark, to ex-players like Cheryl Swoops talking about Caitlin Clark. We know all the ESPN stuff with Monica McNutt and Andrea Carter and all of that, to the way the players handled, not only just with Caitlin Clark, but how they handled press conferences in general. And maybe they always acted like that, but we didn't see it. The league didn't do anything to prepare their players. Again, another huge misstep, which you can even set aside from Caitlin Clark, but it's something the league absolutely should have done, knowing that Caitlin Clark was bringing these fans, and they say, hey, look, even that we need to prepare our players for how to handle the press now that there are eyeballs on it and people are going to actually see these interactions, because they've been terrible. We've talked about it. We've talked about multiple ones with Kennedy Carter after her attack on Caitlin Clark and how she handled that, and you know Asia Wilson early in the season, and even her coach early in the season, and so on and so forth. It has been really bad the way that they have handled things, but huge numbers for Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, and look, I'd love to see them go on a run, go all the way, win a title. I think that would be fantastic for the Fever. It'd be fantastic for Caitlin Clark, obviously, and it would actually help the league out a lot. But I don't think that's going to happen, and it will be interesting to see what the numbers look like if the Fever bow out of the playoffs before the finals. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the numbers for Caitlin Clark and the Fever, all the issues with the league, and what do you think they need to do differently to make sure they bring these people back next year and expand the fan base. I know we've got some Clark fans that have become fans of some other players and stuff, but as you can see by the numbers, it is way different. I think it was, I think the Fever did what, almost four times, right? Roughly four times more than the next highest game. I think that's just almost exactly right? 1.84 million to 461,000. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for checking out this video. I really do appreciate it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Fewer than 300 away from 10,000. Absolutely insane. Thank you all so much, and I will talk to you later.